What if I told you that some of the things you consider completely impossible could change the moment you stop treating them as impossible? Clear skin after nearly 15 years of acne. A raise that arrived just hours after deciding it was already yours, even while your company was talking about downsizing. Getting accepted into a prestigious program after being told you probably weren't competitive enough. Receiving a Mercedes for your birthday when there was absolutely no reason to expect your family to buy you a car. And even an ex who once moved abroad, ghosted for days, and claimed to be too busy for a relationship, eventually changing his entire situation because he wanted to come back. These aren't hypothetical examples. These are real experiences shared as manifestations, and today on Real Life Manifestations, we're breaking down the entire story because the most interesting part isn't just what happened. It's what changed in the person's mind before any of it happened. This person had been dealing with moderate acne for damn near 15 years. They had tried practically everything short of acuting, but nothing seemed to work. No matter what they did, the acne remained a part of their reality. But eventually, something about the law finally clicked for them. Instead of continuing to identify as someone who had acne and waiting for their skin to somehow change first, they decided that acne was simply in the past. It wasn't something they were trying to get rid of anymore. In their mind, it was already over. They accepted that they now had extremely clear skin, and within a few weeks, their skin actually cleared up without them changing anything else. And there was another interesting bonus. They had always had a neutral-leaning cool undertone that they didn't particularly like. So they decided they wanted rich, warm, tan-looking skin instead. And now they genuinely love the tone of their skin. To them, it was another reminder that the law isn't limited to the things that seem realistic or reasonable. Then came the manifestation of the raise. One day, right before taking a nap, they were feeling extremely disappointed about their finances. Instead of sitting there in that frustration, they decided to declare that they had gotten a raise. Now here's what makes this story even more interesting. Their manager had literally warned everyone about possible downsizing that same week. In the physical circumstances, a raise probably wasn't the conclusion most people would have expected. If anything, the circumstances were pointing in the opposite direction. But they didn't let that determine their assumption. They simply declared that they had received a raise, accepted it as done, and went to sleep. They weren't trying to figure out who would approve it, where the money would come from, or how the company could possibly justify it. They just decided it was true. About an hour later, they woke up, checked their phone, and saw an email from their boss informing them that they had received a raise. The circumstances had changed while they were asleep, but the important part was that the decision had already been made in their mind. Then there was the program they applied to extremely late. This wasn't some easy program where almost everyone got accepted. It was prestigious, competitive, and they openly admitted that they weren't exactly the most competitive applicant. An academic advisor even told them that the best-case scenario would probably be getting waitlisted, and even then, they shouldn't get their hopes up. But instead of taking that prediction as fact, they applied anyway. And after applying, they told themselves that they had already gotten in. They didn't know how the acceptance would happen. They didn't try to calculate the odds or obsess over the application process. They simply accepted the end result. 3 days later, they found out that they had been accepted, not waitlisted, not placed on some uncertain list. They actually got in. And once again, the physical circumstances didn't seem to support the assumption beforehand, but that didn't stop the outcome from appearing. Then comes one of the funniest manifestations in the entire story because, according to them, this one was almost an accident. The night before their birthday, they joked with a friend that they were getting a Mercedes because they were spoiled. Normally, that would just be a joke, but the joke was especially funny because of their family's circumstances at the time. Their parents were solidly working class. They weren't really a birthday celebration family because of their culture and religion. And their older siblings had all been responsible for buying their own first cars, which were very old Hondas and Toyotas. So there was absolutely no reason for this person to expect their parents to buy them a car, let alone a luxury Mercedes. Yet the next morning, they woke up and their mom showed them pictures of the Mercedes they were going to get in a few days. They were completely floored. But the actual bridge of incidents was almost crazier than the manifestation itself. The Merceds belonged to their mom's coworker's cousin. The cousin was moving quickly and didn't need the extra car anymore, so she sold it to their mom for an incredible price. And then came the part that really drove the point home. The person asked their mom why she was giving the car to them instead of simply selling it. And their mom's response was, "It's your birthday and I want to spoil you." Think about that for a second. The person had no reason to expect a Mercedes. Their family's history didn't suggest it. Their financial circumstances didn't suggest it. And yet, one casual declaration became reality through a series of events they could never have planned themselves. They described it as literally an impossible manifestation, but it taught them one of the biggest lessons of all: detachment is key. They didn't sit there trying to engineer the Mercedes. They didn't obsess over the how. They made the statement, and life somehow arranged the details. But the most dramatic story might be what happened with their ex. This was someone they really loved. They had broken up because he moved abroad to study. In the year leading up to his departure, they had a failed situationship, and even after he came back from his first year abroad, they continued hooking up casually despite the fact that this person really wanted more. Eventually, they reached a point where they simply woke up one day and decided to move on. They realized it wasn't the relationship they wanted anymore, and he wasn't the man they remembered having before, so they blocked him. Then they remembered something important about the law. They realized that they could revise him and revise the relationship itself. Even though they never unblocked him, they began telling themselves that he was completely in love with them. He couldn't let them go. He would do anything to stay for them. And then the circumstances started getting absolutely ridiculous. Suddenly, they began receiving tons of no-caller ID calls. They ignored them because they were detached from the bridge and weren't interested in chasing after the manifestation. But then things escalated. His friends started texting and calling. Sometimes it was apparently him using their phones, and other times it was his friends asking this person to unblock him. Then flowers started getting delivered to their house. He even started calling their workplace. And remember, this was the same guy who had previously ghosted them for days at a time and had supposedly been too preoccupied with school to have a relationship. Yet now, suddenly, he was doing everything possible to get their attention. And they kept ignoring him because they wanted to see the manifestation all the way through. As they put it, they don't half-ass anything. Eventually, a mutual friend called them and revealed that their ex had left the program he was studying in because he had gotten a really good job back in their country. It was secure, paid very well, and gave him a reason to stay. And after hearing that, this person said they absolutely lost it. They said they cackled like a hyena. They were laughing because the entire situation had become so absurd that it was almost unbelievable. They immediately called their ex to confirm everything, and he told them that it was all true. But then came the part that made the story even crazier. He explained that the reason he had started looking for that opportunity in the first place was because he wanted to stay in their country and try to get back together with them. The very situation that once seemed impossible had unfolded through a chain of events this person couldn't have orchestrated themselves. And those weren't even all of the manifestations. They described having countless other experiences with the law. They lost weight without changing their diet because they manifested being a specific weight. They manifested seeing a coworker from years ago at their current job, and a few days later, that person literally walked into the workplace. They wanted to become more sociable, so they assumed they were more sociable, and suddenly they found themselves with multiple new friends without deliberately trying to make it happen. There were so many other things they said they had received because of the law that they could probably make an entire list out of them. And honestly, that's what makes these stories so fascinating. Some of these manifestations were enormous. Some were seemingly small. Some happened almost immediately, while others unfolded through a bizarre chain of circumstances. But underneath all of them was the same basic principle. They stopped allowing the current circumstances to dictate what they believed was possible. The acne didn't have to remain because it had been there for 15 years. The raise didn't become impossible just because management was talking about downsizing. The program didn't become inaccessible just because an advisor said they weren't competitive. The Mercedes didn't become impossible because their family had never bought luxury cars. And the relationship didn't have to remain stuck in its old pattern just because that was how the relationship had looked before. The biggest shift was deciding that the old story was no longer the story they were going to live from. Instead of asking, "How could this possibly happen?" they started accepting the end result as if it were already true. And once that assumption became natural enough, the physical world eventually reflected it. Now, whether you call this manifestation, the law of assumption, or simply changing your internal identity, the lesson from these stories is incredibly powerful. You don't always need evidence before you decide something is yours. You don't need the circumstances to give you permission to believe in a different outcome. And you definitely don't need to know every step between where you are and where you want to be. Sometimes the biggest mistake we make is looking at the current reality and treating it like a permanent verdict. We see the acne, the bank account, the rejection, the relationship, the circumstances, the past, and we say, "This is just how things are." But these stories show the opposite approach. You can decide that what happened before is simply the old story. You can choose a new assumption and persist in it without constantly checking whether the outside world has caught up yet. And perhaps that's the most important part of all of these impossible manifestations. The bridge of incidents doesn't have to make sense to you. The person who manifested the Mercedes didn't know it would come through a coworker's cousin who was moving. The person who manifested the raise didn't know an email would arrive while they were asleep. The person who got accepted didn't know how the admissions decision would change. The person who revised their relationship couldn't have predicted that their ex would leave his program, find a secure and well-paying job, return to their country, and openly admit that he wanted to stay because he wanted another chance with them. They didn't have to figure it all out. They simply decided what the end looked like and let the rest unfold. So if you've been looking at your circumstances and thinking, "There's no way this can happen for me," maybe that's exactly the thought worth challenging. Because impossible is often just a description of what you can currently see, not necessarily a limit on what can happen next. And if there's one thing these stories repeatedly demonstrate, it's this. You don't have to half-ass your assumption. You don't have to keep checking the 3D every 5 minutes. You don't have to obsess over the bridge. You don't have to convince everyone around you. Decide what you want. Accept it as done. Become familiar with the version of reality where it's already yours. And then let life surprise you with the how. This has been Real Life Manifestations, where we share real manifestation success stories and break down the lessons behind them so you can start looking at your own reality differently. If these stories give you even a little more faith in what is possible, make sure you subscribe because there are plenty more real experiences, techniques, and success stories coming your way. And remember, circumstances don't get the final say. Your assumption does.